But the airport never truly left him. In late 2022, feeling his time was near, Mehran walked back into Charles de Gaulle Airport. He returned to the only place that ever felt like home. A few weeks later, he passed away right there in the terminal, bringing one of the strangest human stories in history to a tragic full circle. The man who lived in an airport for 18 years. Imagine being trapped inside an airport. Not for a few hours due to a delayed flight, but for 18 years. You cannot step outside into the fresh air, you cannot leave the terminal, and legally, you don't even exist. This isn't a Hollywood movie plot, it is the bizarre, mind-bending true story of Mehran Karimi Nasseri, the man who became a permanent resident of Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport. It all started in August 1988. Mehran, an Iranian refugee, boarded a plane headed for London via Paris. But during his journey, disaster struck. His briefcase, which contained all his official refugee documents and papers, was stolen. When he landed at Charles de Gaulle Airport in France, he ran straight into a bureaucratic nightmare. Without his paperwork, French immigration officers couldn't let him enter Paris. However, because he was technically a registered refugee with nowhere to return to, they couldn't deport him back to Iran either. He was caught in a massive legal paradox. The French courts eventually made a surreal decision: Mehran couldn't enter France, but he couldn't be kicked out of the airport either. Terminal 1 became his permanent address. How does someone survive in an airport terminal for nearly 2 decades? Mehran adapted. He took over a single red plastic bench in the basement of Terminal 1. That bench became his living room, his bed, and his safe space. He established a strict daily routine. He woke up at 5:30 a.m. every morning, before the rush of travelers, to wash and shave in the public restrooms. The airport staff grew to love him and nicknamed him Sir Alfred. McDonald's employees gave him free meals, and flight crews dropped off newspapers, magazines, and books to keep him company. He spent his days sitting on his bench, smoking his pipe, writing in his diary, and watching the world pass him by. By 1999, 11 years into his stay, a famous French human rights lawyer finally managed to win Mehran's case. The French government officially offered him a residency permit and the freedom to walk out of the airport as a free man. Everyone expected him to run for the exit. But instead, Mehran looked at the official documents, shook his head, and refused to sign them. Years of isolation inside a noisy, brightly lit terminal had changed him psychologically. The airport was no longer his prison, it had become his safe haven, and the outside world terrified him. He chose to stay on his red bench for another 7 years. Finally, in 2006, Mehran fell ill and had to be hospitalized, forcing him out of the terminal. He lived in public shelters in Paris for years, supported by the money he received from Hollywood when they made the movie The Terminal based on his life.